the immigration process in the United States is really enormously complex, partly driven by an anti-immigrant animus in Congress very often, and it's compounded by an anti-gay animus that happens in Congress. And I'm going to explain some of the basic categories that we have, so that if you're an immigrant yourself, or if you have a partner or a friend or whatever, you can try to figure what things would fit for you, what would work. And then mention some of the areas that would block you from maintaining or gaining the status, what they call grounds of exclusion. I'm going to mention in detail the very recent changes in HIV exclusion, which are a significant victory for all of us. And then some history of discrimination against lesbian, gay, bi, and transgender people in the law, but not just pointing at the trouble that we've had over the years, including now with DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act, but also focusing on some of the victories we've had, and reminding you that, as Captain Picard used to say, when they said resistance is futile, you will be assimilated. We will not. We will stand and we will resist. So the categories. First of all, between the Constitution and the Immigration and Nationality Act, the world is divided into citizens and aliens. Aliens is the term in the law, so I won't keep repeating it. If someone is born in the United States, they're a citizen by birth, unless their parents are active duty diplomats. Everybody else born in the United States, regardless of that child, the parent's status, is a U.S. citizen. If you're born abroad of U.S. parents, in some circumstances you're a citizen, not always, and that law has been extremely fluid for over 100 years, taking and giving away citizenship rights to children born outside the U.S. And then the largest group, too, currently of new citizens, obviously besides birth, is people who naturalize, people who are permanent residents and go through a process of choosing to become a U.S. citizen through the Immigration Service and the federal courts generally. The rest of the world are foreign nationals, and it's divided into persons who are lawful permanent residents, that is, they get a green card, they are immigrants, they intend to be here permanently. Non-immigrants, persons who are temporarily permitted in the U.S. And I'm going to go through those categories in some detail so that you'll have, again, more information to see where maybe you or your friends or partners might fit. The other big groups are refugees, asylees, and persons with temporary protected status. Anita's going to speak at length about asylum. TPS is really important right now, as you probably know, because of the massive earthquakes in Haiti. The Obama administration declared that Haitians who are in the United States as of the 21st of January, is a few days after the earthquake, are allowed to apply for temporary protected status. So it gets used from time to time, and it's extremely important for their safety. It will allow them to, if you know any Haitians, they can apply, get permission to work, driver's license, Social Security, etc. It only lasts for 18 months, but it's a very important category. The rest of the people here are persons without status, entered without inspection, illegal from when they first stepped into the U.S., or persons who had status and lost it because of some violation, the expiration of some visa, or as the case may be with a number of gay people, the law doesn't permit easy transitions because it won't recognize our relationships. And so if you were straight, you might easily transition from one non-immigrant category to residence. And if you're gay, that's not nearly as easy. So I want to focus on some of the non-immigrant categories, because if you can latch on to one of them, if it fits for you, it's a way of maintaining yourself legally in the U.S. Once you go into without lawful status, it's very hard to move to something permanent or otherwise legal afterwards. And the government, not just this administration, but for the past 15 to 20 years, has been increasing the budget dramatically for removals, for deportation. So it's not to scare people, but just to say that the reality is that the number of people being removed has become rather enormous. The population of Worcester, which is 180,000, was removed twice last year, just to give you a sense of proportion. So Worcester is 180,000. 360,000 people were removed by the government last year. So 10 years out, we're going to have deported 3.5 million people. It really gets sort of ugly, and politically we need to address a lot of this. So some of the non-immigrant categories. They're in the Immigration and Nationality Act, if you'd like to do that type of looking up. And they're in the Code of Federal Regulations. They give a letter, just as Congress enacted a next section of the statute, they just pick the next available letter and work on down. So there's no importance to the letters, except you've got to remember them. and there'll be a test at the end. So H-1B, this is coming up big right now. April 1st is the filing for people who are here in the United States with at least a bachelor's degree and can find an American employer to sponsor them. You can get 3 or 6 years legally in the United States. It allows you to do that professional work, but it does require that an American employer sponsor you. Some people set up their own corporations. They've actually just made that even more difficult. If you're Canadian or Mexican, under the North American Free Trade Agreement, the trade national category is very helpful. And that used to be 1 year at a time. That was extended 2 years ago to now 3-year status in the US. Persons of extraordinary ability, you see this extensively in the academic and research communities. Again, good for 3 years and renewable almost indefinitely. Just that most of us aren't extraordinary. In this case, people think they are, but not necessarily. So, intra-company transferees. If you worked abroad for an American company or a foreign company that has an American branch, affiliate, or subsidiary, you can get transferred in. I've had a number of gay clients who they were in partnerships. One of the foreign national left got specifically aimed to get employed by an entity outside the United States. It was either an American company or, again, had a branch or affiliate here, and then got themselves transferred back in. It's not an easy process, but once you're in, it's good for 5 to 7 years. And we keep hoping, as things have changed, when we get to some of the history, you're going to see some very significant success we've had in changing the law. We keep hoping that other things will change, so maybe 5 years is a safe enough platform to be together and to be able to work, etc., and then create something better for yourselves in the future. Exchange scholars and trainees come to this part of the United States in huge numbers, mostly to the universities, but some to others. And at the end of that, you can get academic training, which allows you to work for a period of time. B1 visitors for business. If you're outside the United States and you can get sent in occasionally to work for your employer abroad, that is to be employed abroad but work in the U.S., the B1 can work. It's not to live here, it's not to be paid here, but again, it's a category that sometimes can work. Religious workers, any religion, any background, either an ordained minister, imam, rabbi, priest, etc., or a layperson who's doing religious work. We just did a complicated one for a director of music at a big church. Performers, if you are part of a troupe, or if you, like we're working on one with the Museum of Fine Arts where someone comes in and does some type of performances related to art, so that can work. F students, my guess is a lot of the foreign nationals here came as Fs. Academic students, you can get your degree and then get a year to work called optional practical training. You can get a master's degree and then get another year of optional practical training. So that the F becomes a good platform for some people. You're advancing your careers, you're advancing your education, and it opens the doors to stay longer. Australians, we call this the H-1B for Australians, available for only Australians. We were hoping that was going to be expanded. Senator Kennedy tried to get that moved to include a number of other nationalities so that they would come in this non-quota category. H's have a big quota of only 85,000 a year. None of these other categories have quotas. Treaty traders and treaty investors, if you're an entrepreneurial type. If you're a Singaporean or a Chilean, there is a specific H-1B just for you, and the numbers in that category have never been used up. So that also is extremely helpful. And then the last group is cultural exchange program participants. Again, small numbers in this, but it's worth knowing that it's there. The run of these non-immigrant visas starts at A, which are diplomats, and runs all the way down to W at this point. So there are others that I haven't mentioned, but these are probably the most popular ones. But again, you can go to the Immigration and Nationality Act or Chapter 8 of the Code of Federal Regulations and look some of this up too. On the lawful permanent resident side then, most people who get this have been non-immigrants in one of those categories that I mentioned. You don't have to have been, you could have been brought in from outside. I'll speak at some length about that. And I'm sorry I'm moving quickly, but we've got limited time and we've got a great panel, so save your questions, and I hope this will trigger some for later on. But I'll speak a little bit at length about family and employment-based categories, the two most common. Another one is the diversity lottery. There's no harm in applying for it, even if you're a student. If students have to prove they intend to go home, they have non-immigrant intent. But applying for the diversity lottery doesn't bust your F1 non-immigrant intent requirement. So you can do that, or you can do it as a J also. If you're here illegally, it's not going to be easy, because if you're here illegally and you win the lottery, you have to process outside. And if you've been here for a certain period of time, when you leave, you won't get back in. So if you win that lottery and you aren't allowed to process here, check with an attorney or an immigrant rights group to find out whether or not you really should leave, because the departure may be the last time in the United States.